Well, welcome everybody. This is Councilmember Steve Rao, former Mayor Pro Tem town of Morrisville, and I want to welcome you all to a Veterans Day event that I'm hosting. We have a great lineup today with Brian Hamilton, the CEO of the Hamilton Foundation, and he's here, a good friend of mine, a great leader in our community and state, and also the NC Vet Biz Committee, the Business Association. So I've been asked to just give a few words of inspiration before we kick it off to the star of the show, Brian Hamilton, and our guests. But I want to wish everyone a happy Veterans Day. And actually this morning I was wearing my Captain America shirt, literally, that I got from Target. And as I remind my children, the greatest heroes are the veterans and soldiers of our country who do everything to keep us safe and free. They really are, each of you are an everlasting reminder of the light of hope and that exists in each of us. And no matter how dark and uncertain the world has ever been or is now, we know that veterans exemplify the selfless sacrifice. And so from my family to yours, I just want to thank each of you for everything that you do. And if you're a soldier out there right now, in any place in the country or world, we pray for you. If you're a family who has lost a loved one due to COVID or any illness, or someone in the military, we pray for you. And we need to do everything we can to help veterans. On a closing message, before I hand it over and introduce our chief guest, the other day someone asked me, Steve, why do you do so much for veterans? Well, I am not a veteran. I am a board member of NC Vet Biz, but I married into a military family. My wife's parents were immigrants from India. And in the 1970s, they came to America and enlisted in the US Air Force after they completed their residency training. I married the colonel's daughter, plural, because they both were colonels, and I got married on an Air Force base. And one of the last things my father-in-law said, and I got emotional today thinking about it, but I'm not going to cry today because I just got it out of my system. But about a week before he passed away, he was with his granddaughter. And he was, every week she would go have tea with him. And he said the three things he was proudest of as an immigrant to this country was coming here to become a doctor, when he was inspired by Neil Armstrong walking on the moon, and then going into an organization where he could help as many people as he could as a physician, and working with the finest troops from around the world. And he ended his career in Yokota and San Antonio before they retired in Morrisville. And he also was just proud of his grandkids and proud of America and proud of the freedom that every veteran and every soldier fights for. And so I made him a promise. He said, even if you get out of politics, I want you to do one thing. I want you to work to help veterans as much as you can, always. Because veterans need to be helped every day, not just on Veterans Day. So Dad, if you're watching from heaven, I'm honoring what you asked me to do. So thank you so much. And on that note, I want to introduce a special guest who's going to give a few remarks. We are airing the first few minutes of this on Radio Mirchi, which is the Triangle region's largest South Asian radio station, also aired in Baltimore and Philadelphia. So we have with us today Brian Hamilton. And the theme of this event is supporting veteran businesses and entrepreneurs, and what we can do to help those veterans that are transitioning back into civilian society, and how we can help them and what are out there, but also to get advice from a seasoned executive CEO. And so Brian Hamilton is the founder of SageWorks. He's an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and the leading voice on the power of ownership to transform lives. He founded SageWorks. This was the country's first fintech company, which developed a patented technology that has helped millions of small business owners translate companies into financial information, translate financial information. He's also the founder of Inmates to Entrepreneurs, the longest running program of its kind that teaches people with criminal records how to start and grow their own businesses. And finally, through the Hamilton Foundation, the Brian Hamilton Foundation, he helps people overcome obstacles to realize their greatest potential through business ownership. He was raised in Bridgeport, Connecticut, but we are proud to call him a North Carolinian. And I tell you, I'm so proud to call him a friend because he helps people so much. And Brian, we know you're a really, really busy man. I wish we could be doing this in person. Maybe next year we'll be bringing you to Morrisville to do this in person, but I want to hand now the Zoom. The Zoom is yours, as I say.
Great.
Thank you so much. And if you could give us a few remarks to our citizens and NC Vet.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Steve. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I do appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. It's always good to see you, and I always appreciate everything you're doing in the community. We need good leaders, and you're a high energy guy and an effective guy. So I really do appreciate it. I'm going to keep my remarks pretty short, Steve, just to give you a little bit of perspective on my background and what I do, and then we can go to the panel discussion. I always like that more anyway, and maybe some questions. Mark, I like your background, by the way. I hope everybody can see the. I don't know. I don't know if you're there, but I like it. Um, but that was. It's funny. When I was when my boys were kids, like we would do these cross country trips driving, and it was really great. It was in the summer. I get the boys in the car and I say, well, where do you want to go? And they say, well, we don't know. And I'm like, I don't either. And I get on 40 and we would just drive west randomly, but probably like 3 weeks, just going anywhere, Montana, down to Texas, California, whatever. And we'd see all these national monuments. But my favorite is Mount Rushmore, absolutely. And I don't know if you guys ever, it's hard to get to, unfortunately. It's really a bummer because it's a little difficult to get there. You go to Rapid City, but it's hard to get to that airport. But anyway, I don't know if you remember it, Mark, but the first time I remember it, I remember the first time going around the mountain passes there, these the Black Hills, and I'm looking for it, and all of a sudden I look off to the right, and wow, and it's my favorite place. It's just on every American. I know it's hokey, but I love Mount Rushmore anyway, so I had to make a comment. Um, I'll give you some perspective on me and where I'm coming from, and I do want to answer the question that Steve brings up specifically. Um, I'm not a veteran. I don't like when you speak. You're always they tell you to try to relate to your audience and all this sort of stuff, but sometimes that comes across as kind of fake. I started Inmates to Entrepreneurs 28 years ago, and we help people who have been incarcerated to start their own businesses. But I haven't been incarcerated, so I don't. When I go to the prisons, I don't want to act, like try to relate to people. But I do love veterans, and there's a reason. When I was a kid, I was born in '63. For those of you joining, from that generation, I had 16 aunts and uncles. I think about I don't know the math on it, but like 10 uncles who served in World War II. And my Uncle Jack, I mean, when I say served, he got shot at it. He had metal plate in his head. And some of these guys actually saw combat. But I really do love that generation. I know there's books written about that generation. I know that. But I always think of my uncles as, these guys smoking the cigarettes without the filters. Some of you can relate to this. But, they got the cigarettes without the filters, very direct, very blunt, and very much oriented toward doing things. I was raised by a man like that. My father served in the Marine Corps. I always, when I was 18, I said to him, he said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to go join the Marine Corps. And he said, you don't need to join the Marine Corps. And I said, well, why? And he goes, because you've been in the Marines for 18 years. And if you knew my dad, it's true. But the point is, it was a big part of my experience to be around people who had served, the real deal. I mean, absolutely. And I like the values there. I mean, I love the values there. So my heart's in this, even though I don't have a dog in the fight, my heart's in it. I'm not going to tell you stuff that you already know. It's just a waste of time. Not always, but people who get out from military service have difficulty time transitioning. I've looked at the data, Steve. I don't know if you have, but it's not great actually. I mean, there's like problems people get out and getting a job or transitioning. There's more depression, more alcoholism. Not everybody, but the data is a little daunting. So we got to serve the veterans. There's no doubt about it. I mean, absolutely. And I have a specific thing I'm going to talk to you about that. But we've got to do more because this is a group of people who, they need the help, right? For those of you who know me, and some of you do, my gig is entrepreneurship. I love entrepreneurship because if you look at every group of people in our history, now, Mark, I don't know you, Steve, you mentioned about your parents. I mean, you represent really all of us, really, right? I mean, unless you're of color, your ancestors were brought here, you came here to get the second chance and get a better life, right? I mean, that's That's why we did this. So to me, there's two ways up in society. There's really only two actual ways. Like, get a better education, right? That's why your parents are on you to study. That's why I was on my kids, right? Get a better education. And the second way is entrepreneurship and owning things. You look at every immigrant group. What did they do? They started businesses. You look at any group of people who have had problems, they started businesses so they could develop wealth and ownership. So I'm a huge advocate of that. And I have something to say about that. And I'm stealing the thunder of a couple of our partners who deal with this stuff, Bunker Labs being one of them. The CEO was talking about this. I kind of knew it too, but he mentioned it in a talk of his. He was like, do you know after World War II, I bet you, none of you know, I didn't know this. After World War II, what percentage of people getting out of the military started businesses? There's 60%, 60. Now it's like 6%. So there's been a fundamental shift in our society of veterans getting out, that they're not starting their own stuff. In fact, it's really a national trend. So that worries me, because if you look at any group of people who have had challenges, the way for them to come up has been by entrepreneurship. So I would ask you to reflect on that piece of information. Charlie's over here. Steve, you know Charlie, he's the CEO of the foundation. I look at my aunts and uncles, Charlie, when they got out, and now that I think about half of them started businesses. But we have very low rate of business ownership and formation among people who are veterans, and we got to reverse that. So in our foundation, we do work with Veterans Group. We got a partnership with Fayetteville State University to teach entrepreneurship and ownership to veterans. That's what I'm about. And I guess, so let me answer the question. Steve, we don't have to cut this early because I know other people have opinions, right? But you asked the question, you think, what can we do? Now, I'm 57 years old. I've started 3 businesses. I've exited a few, the last one pretty successfully. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. We talk about capital formation. We need to get loans to people. We need this. What people need is training. Absolutely training. There is no doubt about it. Training. Just like my father went to, Paris Island, right? Some of you maybe are Marines. You go there, that's called boot camp. You go there, you get trained in a new way to think. That's what they do. They reprogram you there, right? My experience in working with veterans, my experience in working with entrepreneur groups, my experience in working with people who've been in prison starting businesses is teaching them how to do it. People will do the work or not, but they often don't know how to do something. So whether it's getting a job or starting a business, where I believe people need help is they need to learn how to fish. They need to learn how to fish. Like, for example, I don't want to start any arguments today, but, I've been doing this my whole life. So, well, we need to get loans to people. I'm like, well, personally, when I start a business and I don't have cash flow, I don't want a loan. I want to start a low capital business, so I don't want debt service on my head right from the get-go. Now, I know there's exceptions to that. If someone's going to own a restaurant, they probably need a loan or something like that. But it's really not just capital that people need. It's training and thought leadership and how to do it. So that's what we do. We teach people how to do it. And our partnerships with veterans groups, we're about teaching people how to fish. And by the way, all of our mentors are former entrepreneurs, are current entrepreneurs. So we like to think that we know what we're doing. So that's what I'm about. But I'm going to just wrap it up, Steve. I'm going to say this. I really look at our country right now, and I'm worried. I'm worried that 40 years ago, the percentage of people starting businesses is 25, 30%. Every year it's going down. Now, what percentage of people have a business now in the US? 9%. Can you believe that? Now we got COVID, we got all the bakeries, all the small businesses going out of business. So why am I worried about that? Because this country has grown through new business formation, through entrepreneurship. That's how we've been the leader. And so the country's at risk, and certainly the veterans are at risk with regard to that. The data is just obvious. So I guess that's what I would offer to this conversation. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, especially on Veterans Day.
Absolutely. We're going to continue this conversation. We have an hour, 45 minutes, but thank you so much. And the radio portion, but we're going to continue. But you've been listening on Radio Murchie along with our social media streams. But we've had Brian Hamilton, and we're with NC VitBiz. So I want to thank Murchie for covering the first few minutes. We're going to now continue with the panel. So Brian, thank you so much. And those remarks were pouring on, and you've given me some really good, I think, thoughts on how to interact and have a good discussion. So we're going to start with Mark Haupt, who is a board member with me at NC VetBiz, and Kate Taylor. So Mark, if you could just tell a little bit the group about NC VetBiz. You've been there for a while. We're one of the founders, when it started, what its mission is, and then Kate, maybe you can talk a little bit about sort of the rebranding that's going on and the kind of resources that we're providing to veteran businesses who may be listening today.
Great. Thanks, Steve. And thanks, Brian, for those comments. I think that you hit on one of the tenets of the associations of why we initially started. And I know Kate's going to talk about, what's going on now and what's going to be going on in the forward. Basically, the association was started about 12 years ago. 4 veterans got in a room and said, we need to do a couple of things. We need to educate, support, and connect veteran business owners and veteran professionals in the state of North Carolina to make North Carolina one of the strongest states in the union for commerce, as well as for commerce with veterans. So that's how the genesis of the organization started. A lot of veteran businesses in the state of North Carolina, a lot of sole proprietors that are veterans in the state of North Carolina. We wanted to connect them together because they're like-minded. We kind of know each other's behavior. We understand what it takes to deliver. Interesting about your entrepreneurial comment, which branch of the service do you think creates more entrepreneurials?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have to say Marines because I'm from a Marine family.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head. It is the Marines. The Marines are more proactive in creating and being entrepreneurials than any other branch of the service. So, well done, Brian. I want to just pass this over to Kate, but again, what we try to do is we try to mentor, connect, support, and educate. And educate, to Brian's point, is the keys to the city. If you can get education experience, we mentor, we support, and we try to steer people and keep them on the path that is that they want to be from a success perspective. So that's why we're here. Look forward to your questions. Those are the best part of these things. And I'll hand it over to you, Kate.
Hey.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody. I am the current president of North Carolina Veterans Business Association and a former Air Force member. So kudos to Marines. The Navy's adopted me. I've been working with the Navy for 5 years. What we've been doing in the past, we've had live events for our membership and networking, training, all kinds of things. And then when COVID hit, there's actually a blessing that came out of it, at least for our organization. And that is that it gave us an opportunity to really rethink our direction and what we can offer veteran entrepreneurs. And so over the last few months, we've been rebranding. We've gotten more technology focused, and we're listening to our membership, running focus groups and virtual events. And we're redefining our strategy and then putting the operational components in place to execute. So for example, one of our members launched a chapter in Wilmington, and he was able to put us on the Slack platform so that now our statewide membership can network and exchange ideas and be aware of events and things like that. So we're doing a total rethinking in the current age. So more to come. We're working through that process. Anything you want to add to that, Mark or Steve?
No, I mean, I think great, so before I'm going to ask Brian a question to kick us off, but I want to come back and talk a little bit about just, the types of events that you were doing, but how we are transitioning into more virtual events. But I guess, Brian, you hit on one thing, because there's a lot of people listening all around Morrisville, the Triangle, that just are like, we got Brian Hamilton on, we got to ask him a question about COVID-19, the pandemic. And so, a few months ago, I had a family friend of mine, a man I know you know, John Chambers, former CEO of Cisco.
Yeah.
His mom and dad, his late parents, were all from West Virginia. And he was talking about surviving and thriving in the COVID economy. And one point that John made was that we're going to automate about 40% of the jobs that we know of today. But to create new jobs, we have to create more entrepreneurs. So he thinks that number is about 15 million. And he said in India, he's advising Prime Minister Modi in India right now. He says India is forming a lot of startups. Now, of course, during the pandemic, things have changed. India is really struggling. But I guess my question is, his favorite word is disruption. So disrupt or be disrupted. It's in his book, Lessons of Leadership in the Startup World. And so we see so much disruption going on, innovation and technology. How do people keep up with that pace of change?
Right.
Like, for example,
Yeah. So let me comment on a couple of points there before I don't know the answer to that, but I want to make a couple of comments. The thing that's been striking to me, and I'd like you to just consider it, right, is I don't know many people affected financially by the COVID thing. I mean, I really don't. It's almost like there's been two Americas that have been created. It's extraordinary. Like two distinct Americas. You got, because I'm not from this type of background, but I've done okay in my life, so I'm now in the other camp. But you got poor people or people maybe with lower economic means who have been devastated by COVID, and you got people, Steve, like you and me that, from Cary or whatever. Not like everybody in Cary is this way, but they got. I hate calling it white collar, but let's just call it white collar because I can't think of a label where they've been largely unaffected. It's extraordinary. So to me, specifically with regard to your comment on COVID, the devastating impact on small business, I think, has not been it's alluded to. It's a side note. It's mentioned, but we HAD 26 million small businesses in this country before COVID. I don't know. I'm not an expert on it, although I crack it. I think by the time this all shakes out, Steve, I think there's going to be maybe 20 million, 15 million, who knows? I think there is a cascading and unbelievably devastating impact on small businesses and small business formation. I'm really worried about it. Now, to John's point, he's talking about tech companies, and he's talking, even before I get there, I want to mention a point. I agree. It's almost good, actually, it's obvious, right, that the growth of technology is going to have an impact on jobs. Absolutely right. So what are we going to do about people who are not suited for that new economy? In other words, I understand what John's saying. I get it, right? I get it, right? This is my background, technology. We want more tech companies. We want more formation of that. Like, great. But who's going to be put in those jobs? So there's a lot of people in our society, like my mother and father. My father was a Marine. My father never graduated from high school. Yeah. Now you're going to put them in a tech company. And so, sure, we've got to create tech. We've got to create innovation. We got to keep doing it. But honestly, that's not the dead cat in the room to me. The dead cat in the room are the people who don't have the benefit of education. Their parents maybe weren't educated. They're not suited for this economy. And we say, oh, we're going to bring back manufacturing. I'm like, well, geez, I don't want to be negative, I'm open. I'm all ears here, right? I'm all ears. But if you got a sweater that could be produced for $1 up in Vietnam, and it's going to cost $4 to do it here, So what I'm worried about in this country right now, Steve, really, it's unbelievable. There's two Americas, right? You got people like us and, I don't know. I'm sure that they're suffering a little bit here and there, right? And then you got a huge number of people. What about all the people who work in the hotels? What about all the people who work in the restaurants? My goodness, right? And by the way, what about the hotel owners and the people who own the restaurants? So, John, how am I going to argue against a man who says we need more tech companies and more innovation and we need to keep going? But I think the market will continue to do that. I'm more worried about Main Street businesses and regular people like my parents than, well, actually, frankly, like me when I was young.
And it comes
So-
down, and yeah, exactly. And I think that's where I was going. We'll come back to that, but it comes down to the training. That's the biggest problem is
Absolutely.
open jobs.
Yes.
People don't have the skills. So that's going to be the next question I ask.
Absolutely.
Really want to tap in. Kate and Mark, I'm a veteran. Let's say I'm a veteran. I'm a business owner. There's a lot of organizations doing great things. What can you guys do for me? How can you help me?
Mark, you want to take that first? You want me to? Yes. Okay.
No, okay, so sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, so first off, Brian, that I did take that picture myself that's behind me. You're right, it's an incredible national park. You get chills when you walk in. So yeah, very blessed to be able to do that.
It is beautiful, really beautiful.
So the value proposition for NC VetBiz is really pretty simple. It is the fact that we are connected to the state and federal associations that can provide help and resources for free, and that are experienced and that are interested in the success of your company. That's probably the most important thing is there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of people out there that want to help, but in reality, there's a fee for that, or they're in a specific channel. We're connected to the SBA. We're connected to the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs. We're connected to the SBTDC from a technology perspective. We're connected to the SBA from a lending perspective. So the value that we bring is that connection and that relationship. Second thing that we bring is the connection. So we found that veterans like working with veterans. If there's an opportunity that's on the street that says, hey, I need a bridge built, but I'm only a concrete guy, I need somebody that can actually do construction and engineering, where do I go? So we try to make those connections. Education wise, when we do an event like, and Brian, you spoke at one of our events over at NC State, which was a procurement seminar. We had buyers come in with specific opportunities to hopefully award within the next 2 or 3 months from that. And we do educational sessions. So how do I understand the balance sheet? Where do I go to get lending? How do I market? Who do I market to? All those things are different little subsections of the events that we hold to try to connect the subject matter experts with the entrepreneurial, whether they're long in the tooth or they're new to the market. And really that's the high level view of the value added for the North Carolina Veterans Business Association. It's what we wanted. We want to keep talent in the state. We want the state to be the strongest commerce state in the union. And we know that what we get when we get a veteran and a veteran business owner. Kate?
Right. And we provide a roadmap how to start a business and where to go, like Mark said. Also, what I find interesting is we have in our membership not just entrepreneurs, like we have a baker, we have small businesses in construction, things like that. We also have members that are technology consultants. That I run a management consulting firm, so I can help people with their strategy and business development and things like that. So we have the access to our membership resources that can support each other and help each other grow our own businesses as well. So whether it's government contracting that somebody's interested in, or whether it's contracting in the private sector, we can point them in a direction and save them time and get them to the right resources quicker and less expensive than if they had to figure it out by themselves.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to. Well, it's wonderful, Kate and Mark. I mean, you're getting me amped up about that. Steve, that's the one thing I'd say for people who are listening. Like, it really strikes me that I know it sounds hokey. I get that. But if anybody's listening and you're on the radio here and you're just listening, like, remember, you're not alone. I mean, one of the hardest parts about being in business is or in life, you're alone, right? We all want to think, oh, that other person's popular. They got tons of friends. They probably don't have as many friends as you think, actually. A lot of people, you feel alone. You're not alone. You've got this wonderful organization. I do know that because, yeah, you're right. I remember speaking at that event and being amazingly impressed by what you guys are doing. But the SBA and SCORE And what about the small business centers in North Carolina? We got 54 of them. They're, especially in North Carolina, we've got tons of resources. And what I find, unfortunately, not always true, but I find that they're underused. So get out there and beat the bush. And just remember, you're not alone. There are people who will help you. And Mark, you're right. Not for just for a fee. There's a lot of help out there.
Yeah, I mean, there is. And I mean, it's, we're going to talk about it at the end. There are some great organizations out there, but SBA is a good one. Also, Wake Tech. We're going to talk about training in a minute, but community colleges, Wake Tech's got the veterans. So, Brian, going back, we have about 20 more minutes, but going back to what you said about training. So, this is a real problem. You know, I mean, how do you provide skills to people that have been in manufacturing or not well educated to go and get either in technology, or how do you retrain them and reskill them?
Yeah, well, wow. And I would love to hear from Kate and Mark on that too, but you asked me the stumper, the thing I can't answer. And one of the things I always promised is like, you get in these forums, like you always got some answer. It's like politicians, there's always some answer, right? I mean, sometimes the answers are hard, right? The answers are hard. I'm from that background. I got 46 cousins. I'm Irish Catholic. I came up in Connecticut, all second generation Americans. I was the first person in my direct and extended family to go to college. The first one. There's like 100 second cousins. I can't keep track, but I was the first guy. So when you ask me that question about training for them, I know who them is. That's my family. And a lot of my cousins, you know, graduate from high school. They're not trained for the new economy. So I'm going to throw a hope and a prayer out there. I don't know how to answer your question. I would say this to you, that I think the path to that, for me, you know, again, I don't know, is got to be more use, not exploitation, but more growth, the community college system. Let's train people. They could be plumbers. They could be HVAC people. Look in, I don't know, are we talking to mostly people in the triangle maybe? I don't know.
Yeah,
Try to get a plumber. I mean, you can't get a plumber. You can't get an HVAC. Go become a plumber. What's wrong with being a plumber, by the way? Why is a person running a plumbing company any less meaningful than the guy running Facebook? Frankly, I think he's more meaningful. So I think the community college system, getting people trained in the trades. And other than that, we're going to train them in tech. Now we need a 4-year degree, right? But I would say more stuff on the community college system, because it's not expensive and anybody can get there. But by the way, one other thing too, I mean, I know we're on the radio as well, but like, why is it in our society too that you don't exist if you didn't go to a 4-year college? Why is that? What happened about that? It's amazing to me. I'm 57 years old, and I remember coming up, and I was part of the first generation. Well, you need a 4-year degree. You need a 4-year degree. I'm all for giving people opportunity. I have a 4-year degree, and I got an MBA. But maybe that's not for everybody, Steve. So I would say the community college system, especially in North Carolina, we got 58 of them. I know it well, by the way, real well. I used to teach there, most of them. And get people a trade. Get people QA testing. You know, Steve, you might not know this. You can go to Wake Tech and you can learn how to do QA testing for a software company. You can learn a computer language. So I think we need baby steps. I think, sure, we want everybody in the country to have a master's degree or a PhD or whatever. Is this realistic? I would say the community college system, getting people there, teach them the trades, and get them some specific skills that makes them able to go to work for a tech company.
Yeah, and I think, and just as a follow-up where I can give you some experience, I think you hit the nail on the head. Community colleges is a great resource. Sometimes the untold stories, like, you know, there's a program called NC TAP, which is, I was with Secretary Copeland at a company called Schunk in Morrisville, but it's a German company. So they manufacture gears and the actual robots that make the gears. But they had a guy there, a high school kid one day, this was before COVID, and I was walking the shop floor. High school kid went through NC TAP. He's making $95,000 a year. He's operating the software that runs the robot on the shop floor, cleanest manufacturing. So that's an example of, he went to the community college system. So I think you hit the nail on the head. It may not be artificial intelligence, robotic process automation. There's going to be new skills for that. So even the company Infosys that was brought here from India, they have 10 innovation centers. The newest one is here in Raleigh. They're training a lot of people in jobs that don't exist today, but it doesn't have to be tech. It can be manufacturing, it can be vocational, it could be plumbing. So I think you're right, it's the mindset. And I think we have to get these there in the rural areas.
Yeah.
And you brought up a good point that there's two different states within North Carolina where we're living and talking right now, and then urban. So and rural, right? So what we see around Cary and Morrisville and Apex isn't what they're seeing in other parts today. And that's why these. So anyway, I think that if you're interested, you can go to Wake Tech's website. Anyone
Yeah,
listening?
Steve, let me just real quickly, I want to just jump in because I want to go off your point. I was on a focus group yesterday because I'm buying another tech company. I don't know why I'm doing it, get back in the race, but I'm buying another tech company. I'm doing a focus group. And the kid on there, he's a kid, he's 22, he's on there, never went to college. And he just went to a program at the college out in California to learn how to do computer programming. And so he learned a very finite skill, and I'm sure he's doing great. But I think I don't know what happened. Mark, you're in my generation, right? You know, Kate, Steve, we're all roughly within 100 years. We're all in the same generation. What happened in our generation where you didn't, like, people look down on you if you didn't go to a 4-year school? I mean, I don't know where that came from, but.
Yeah,
I think there's been
So just to go back to your comment, what you were saying, and Kate's a professional educator, so she can speak to this more than I can. But I would say that it's interesting because the skill set that's coming out of the military, the skill set that's coming out of the Department of Defense, guess what? Those are trade guys. Those are trade guys. They worked on airplanes. They worked on boats. They worked on trucks. They did all that stuff. So when they come out, they've got that skill and they've got a passion to, okay, I want to be my own boss. I want to have my own company. I want to be an entrepreneurial. So it's a little bit of an inverse for a veteran because he's got the trade piece or she has the trade piece. How do we get them those other skills? How do we get them those business skills to drive? How do you support that? Because you can't let passion die, right? You have to support that and feed that. So to Steve's question about the community college, there's also opportunities of somebody that's spent 4 years working on trucks, being a plumber, being a boiler man, doing mechanical work, HVAC, all that stuff. So what we're trying to do is let's take that, let's give them the balance of the skills that they need. So soft skills is an example. And Kate, your business is professional education and developing leadership. So I know that you've got some thoughts about that.
Well, yes. And we live in a system. I'm a sociologist by training, so I kind of look at social issues. And one of my mentors early on was Dr. H. Stephen Glenn. If you Google him, you can read all about him. He didn't become as famous as Covey, but he was one of Covey's peers. He studied why discipline, comprehension, motivation, and achievement were actually on the decline starting in the 1960s. And basically the net of it, his studies, is that after World War II, there was a tremendous shift, the explosion of technology and things like that. And what he found was we weren't retooling our school system quick enough in how we were educating our children to develop the thinking skills and the skills needed in the new economy. And I think they're lagging behind. That's part of it. And there's also been a shift in, like you all were saying, I'm just reiterating it, in that value of college degree over practical skills that society needs in business or in the knowledge age.
Yeah, practical skills, beginning young kids to take more risk, looking at different, my son's 13, he's an entrepreneur, he's an artist. And it's so exciting to see him. He's actually, Brian, I want you to meet him sometime. He wants to meet you, but he got his first order in this week where he got a couple $100, and he's mailing it and doing portraits and it's just amazing. And I'm so happy for him. As a parent, how do I channel that to make sure that I told him you should, and being South Asian, there's something within our culture that, you know, when I told my father when I got back from college that I wanted to go find myself, he said, you know, you can go find yourself in med school, engineering school, law school. What's it going to be? I mean, that was about the right thing, right? So
Yeah.
the grandparents are like, well, we don't want him to be an artist. No one wants a grandchild as a poor artist in Paris, right? But I said, you know what? If that's really what he wants to do, you're proof of that, right? Find one thing and be the best at it. That's the advice I gave my son. And it may not be the path that everyone wanted for you, but I've made, I wish I could take years back and say, you know, find one thing that you did. And so, but I'm happy for him. But I think these kids, they have to test, they have to try, and veterans too, right? If you're listening to this, don't wait, just go get it, right? I mean, you can't be an entrepreneur and keep another job. I run into those people all the time. You know, I don't want to leave because I need to check. Well,
we've got to, I think the other thing, going back to what Kate was saying, I mean, I didn't know that about, it's interesting about early childhood development and how the kids are learning or thinking actually. But another part of that too is like our tolerance for risk has gone down so much in society, you know, that, you know what I mean? Like, it just seems like people there's more stigma around failure and frankly, the way you define failure. So I'm like, try something, you know what I mean? I always tell to the kids getting out of college, like, why are you worried about what you do between 20 and 30? Yeah. I'm an old guy. Like so you guys, Steve, you remember, all you do remember, like when we got out of college or got out of school, there was like a stigma. You had to stay at the company for 3 years and then go to graduate school. And that doesn't exist anymore. We need to get the kids to be taking more chances, but we've programmed them. We've even done it in high school. Now they got AP courses. They got you taking college courses in high school. I mean, what the heck? Who came up with that? When I was a kid and I was in high school, I had enough time to go fill my space with sports and running companies. My sons couldn't do that. They got AP courses and all this pressure on them. So there's a lot more conformity. And I worry about I know that's having an effect on entrepreneurship. So anyway, it's just a different attitude a little bit, you know, a little different attitude all the way around.
Yeah, well, how much different might it be if a high school class was run like a company, like a simulation, hands-on? You have to define your strategy, your market, you know, your processes, and they would run it like, well, instead of a semester where they're sitting in their desks, you simulate the company, and at the end you have some form of measurement and how they did. But it's more hands-on risk-taking, and they'll be exposed to that. I don't know that they're exposed in that way.
I know. I mean, we have a couple more minutes. I guess this has been just such an enlightening conversation. And so, you know, Brian, you've given us a lot of really good ideas about, you know, training, your perspective. Do you think that, my last question to you is going to be just any advice you have out there today to an entrepreneur, a veteran entrepreneur about a downtime we're in right now? How do they keep their hopes up, keep moving?
I don't know. That's hard. I mean, that's really hard. I mean, I don't know. Again, I mean, you go, I'm sure you guys do. You drive down like the street in Fuquay Arena or Apex or, well, you know, this Morrisville, and you see these businesses. There's a little bakery, this little bakery down in Fuquay Arena. Fuquay used to be like out, that was like my cousin Vinny territory. I don't know if you guys remember that, but that was like Fuquay, wow. But the Fuquay Arena is a nice little town, right? A growing, and a little bakery down there run by a lady and her husband. I can't remember the name of it. Delicious, I mean, incredible desserts. And so I went by the other day, closed, you know. And so what I would say to you is that there's a lot of, but I would say, one, get advice from other people. You know, go to these great organizations like this organization, go to the SBA. And secondly, hang on to that life raft and don't let go. I mean, I mean, really, that's how I would end on that.
Great. I just took my video off for a minute, guys, because I think sometimes the Wi-Fi issues hit, but I'll put it back on in a minute. But yeah, that's great advice, Brian. And I think we might have another session with you just to come to our chamber and talk to businesses, because I think people need mentoring. And, you know, CEOs don't know what to do. Sales are in a halt. Do I get rid of my salespeople? How do I stabilize my operations? How do I start investing in product lines for the future? Kate, any final thoughts about NC Vet Biz and what you guys are doing to help us in this economy and helping veterans?
Well, I would say just stay tuned. We're poised to launch new technology and increase member engagement and community engagement. So we're poised to take off. There's two very small things that everyone can do who's listening, actually. One may sound hokey, and that is when I find myself, I play mind tricks with yourself, whatever works. I have it a lot better off, given everything I've been through this year, than a lot of people do. And yet I've gone through a lot of stuff this year, like a lot of people. And so I started a gratitude journal and purposely looked for at least 3 things I can be thankful for. And that's shifted a little bit. I don't feel as bad. So if somebody would like to try that idea, it might help them personally. Secondly, I would offer any chance that you have to support a local business, take advantage of that. For example, there's a little company called Only Burger in Durham, which we love, their burgers. And my husband went and bought a $100 gift certificate, and he still has that certificate. And every time we order, he pays them. And I said, well, why did you get the certificate if you're just going to pay for it? He goes, because they needed the money when they needed the money.
There you go. That's a great idea.
So anything you can do to support local.
Absolutely.
We're going to stick around for about 8 more minutes to open it up for questions, but some of the questions I was asking were already coming in. But one question just came in. I'll take the first one. It said, what can I do for veteran homelessness? So I can tell you is that if you go to millvets.biz, there's actually a 1-800 number that you can call. If you are homeless and you are a veteran, you can go there and there are resources. So let me give you the website real quick. I'll come back and give it to you at the end, but there is an organization that you can go to find resources and places you can stay. And I know that Wake County commissioners last year worked on providing a designated amount of affordable housing units to veterans. So we want to thank them. So these are ongoing efforts that we have to do in our cities and our counties to make sure that no veteran who served this country should be on the streets and more homeless. So I think we have to make sure that we're doing what we can. This question just came in, and I'm going to pass it around for all of you. What do you think makes a veteran a good business person or leader in your experience? So starting with the veterans on the panel, and then Brian, from what you've noticed, what comes to mind?
Well, I heard something this morning that really piqued my attention. It was one of our Congress people, who happened to be female veteran. And she was saying, because that question came up, and her answer was really interesting. She said that it's not only the ability to lead, it's also the ability to follow and to put personal biases, preferences aside to totally focus on the mission. And I've been working with organizations for 25 years, and you may have seen it yourselves. In some of our private companies, people forget the mission and they get into the political. I don't mean politics as in, I mean within the company. And anyway, go ahead.
Every day. Yeah, strong leaders. And we've heard Secretary Hall talk about that, just strong leaders. She's a Marine, but it was our Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Mark, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the key is, I think it's responsibility, taking responsibility for your actions. I think you learn that very early on. It starts at boot camp, like Brian mentioned earlier. You take on that responsibility, then you realize that you are part of a team and that you do have responsibilities to the team and you have a responsibility to the country. So I think when you come out, you realize that you can't be self-gratified all the time. You have to participate. You have to get engaged with your employees or with your customers or with your clients or with society. You know, be a good citizen. And I think that that's when you go to boot camp, that's exactly what they do. They break you down, and when you come out, you are a team. You're a unit. I can still tell you the names of some of the guys I was in boot camp with back in 1972. So. And you knew right away who the leaders were, and you learn a chain of command. You learn that sometimes you have to follow the chain of command, and they may have better information than you do, and they're making decisions based upon information that they have and experience, and sometimes you just have to shut up and do it.
Yeah, Mark, I was going to say that's a great point. It's funny, having been raised by my father, like, you sort of just take this stuff for granted. I mean, it's fascinating, right? I literally don't think about those things because I got trained really early on around that. Absolutely. I would say resilience and discipline too. Like, yeah. You know, I mean, definitely, no doubt about it. We talk about the Marines, my goodness, like that was, I mean, being around that environment with all my uncles and like those were tough people. And, you know, life is tough and business is tough. Yes, you got to be resilient. So I would say, I don't know, but I would say that veterans in general are, you know, probably pretty tough people, pretty resilient people. And that's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without my father, Mark, I would have never been able to do the stuff that I've done. There's no way. And I know that.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, this is what this is all about. And I guess the final question, we're gonna bring these guys back. I mean, but the final question is, people are asking, okay, we'll start with Brian Hamilton Foundation. How do people learn more about your foundation and the kinds of things that you're doing, and how can they help?
Yeah, well, we have a real radical name for our organization. It's really hard for me to remember. It's brianhamilton.org. So it's easy to find. Hey, by the way, Kate and Mark, on a serious note, real quickly, but anyways, brianhamilton.org, and it's the Irish spell, BRIAN. But Kate and Mark, one thing too is you can talk to Charlie about it, but we've got a really great program called Starter U. It's totally free. And, you know, if you guys want it, we'll just give it to you, you know, but it's taught by, we literally got some billionaires. We got kids on there who are 18 running loan service business, all practitioners, about 16 hours of very practical stuff and how to start a business. So if we can make that available to you, we're happy to do it.
That would be wonderful, Brian. Thank you.
That's a great offer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kate and Mark, where can people go to learn more about NC Vet Biz?
It's our website is www.ncvetbiz.org, or you can just Google the North Carolina Veterans Business Association.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, before we close out, I mean, I just want to let everyone know that there's so many great organizations. There's, you know, Enable America, which helps the wounded warriors. You can contribute to them. There's NC for Me, which we work with sometimes North Carolina for military employment. They're all about providing businesses. It's a public-private partnership, working with businesses and industry to help transition people back to the civilian society. It's about 78,000 coming back every year in North Carolina over the last few years, and they're all looking for jobs. And most of these people are young. A lot of times, you know, we think someone's silver-haired veteran, but they're like 30s, 32, how to get back. A lot of them have post-traumatic stress disorder. I've run into that a couple of times with some veterans that I met in City Hall that literally can't work because they just are so affected by the PTSD, which is another issue we probably should talk about. I don't think it's, but so, and you've got the Wake Tech Veteran Zone. So there's a number of organizations. And so just try to do that today, if anything. And want to thank each of you for coming, everyone for listening. And as I said earlier, I want to thank the veterans that you are the backbone of our country. And, you know, we are, you know, I've never thought I would have to say the words to myself slowly when I run in the mornings, but every council meeting we go in the Pledge of Allegiance, and, you know, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. don't say it real fast. Say it slow. And the words that pick up on me is one nation, not different parties, people from all walks of life, right? But the word that really got me is indivisible. What does that really mean? Right? We're all in it together. And I think that's, I pray for President-elect Biden and the new Vice President Kamala Harris that we can continue to work to build our country, right? Because a lot of these issues are things that we're going to have to work on together.
Yeah.
You know, but thank you. God bless America and the United States and all the military families, and for all of you, for, Mark and Kate, for your service. And Brian, I'm like you, I'm not a veteran, but you do so much to serve the community. And we are so grateful. And I look forward to meeting you in person and bringing you back here. We'll do a social distance coffee, maybe with a mask on.
Steve, thank you. Yeah, nice to see you too, Brian. Steve, thank you very much. This was a great idea.
Thanks,
Thank you
Kate.
so much. God bless you. Everyone be safe. And remember, the governor, the fun thing I'll tell you is yesterday, Governor Cooper has signed Executive Order 176, which means that indoor gatherings, no more than 10, and we will be in phase 3 until December 4th. So just had to get that out there as a quick little nugget. There's some new stuff every day coming out, right? But that's the big one. So don't have any indoor parties, more than 10 people starting Friday.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Thanks to the listeners.